Hi, I'm Arya. This is Nate Quarry.
Aria,
Hello. Our,
good to see you.
Good to see you too.
Thank you.
Our wonderful UFC fighter, and of course, UFC stands for
The Ultimate Fighting Championship.
exactly. And in this show, we're going to be talking about what I didn't know about UFC or MMA. And right now, I have a few questions for Nate. If you're ready, we can go ahead
I'm ready.
and
My
start.
life is an open book, except where I have no comment.
No,
And it's a closed book.
it's a closed book, and it says
And
zombie.
that is a
cage.
comic book.
That's a comic book, and that's Nate right there.
That's true.
He's a zombie, but not right now. So my first question to you is, what did you do before you became a UFC fighter?
I worked in construction most of my life. I was raised in a very strict religious upbringing where college was not allowed, sports was not allowed. So right out of high school and through high school, I worked at fast food restaurants. My junior and senior year, I worked as a janitor. In my summers, I insulated houses, I painted houses, so just all construction. Right out of high school, I went into framing houses and then got a job at a sign company. So I manufactured and installed signs for big gas stations, Shell stations, Chevron, that kind of stuff. And right around when I was 24, I saw the UFC on TV and just said, for the first time in my life, I'm going to do what I want to do with my life. Joined a gym and started fighting. It took me to the UFC.
So you left your religion at age 24 to do this because of that, or?
Well, I was very unhappy. I was raised as a Jehovah's Witness, and a lot of things about the religion just didn't make sense to me, and I was very unhappy. It's very controlling. They control what you can watch on TV, movies you can watch, music you can listen to, books you can read, friends you can have, even your relatives. If your relatives aren't Jehovah's Witnesses, you're not supposed to spend much time with them. And then even if someone decides they no longer want to be a Jehovah's Witness, they become excommunicated, to whereas the family won't even talk to them.
Oh, wow.
So I was baptized in the church around 16. And in my early 20s, I just said, I'm miserable. I just hate this life. I'm not happy with what I'm doing. And knowing everything that I was going to lose by choosing to even leave the religion, lost all my friends that I'd grown up with, lost my family because they will no longer talk to me. Because in their eyes, I'm now a heathen, or as they call it, an apostate. Someone who knows what the truth is but deliberately goes against it.
Okay.
So to them, I'm just an evil person who has Satan spend the night at his house when he's in town.
Yeah, look at
whenever
your
it is.
picture.
The usual stuff. Yeah, so I decided I was going to, for the first time in my life, do what I wanted to. And at 24, a religion like that, especially a cult, they only have the power over you that you give them.
Mm-hmm.
So when I was 19 and I wanted to leave, well, I had no exterior interest. All I had was witness friends and family. I even worked for a witness. So I lost my job, lost my friends and family at that time. So it was devastating. I crawled to get back into the religion. And then in my early 20s, when I started to educate myself a little bit more about the cult and about where it came from, and had other interests, I started training in mixed martial arts and had friends outside of the church. And then I realized, well, when you take away my friends, that's fine, because I have other friends, I have other interests. It's sad that they won't accept me, but that's what conditional love is all about. You do what we tell you to do, and we'll show you love. And if you don't, then we'll cut that off completely.
That's sad. But now that you have new friends and you joined a gym, because you saw, who did you see on TV that made you, or is it the fight that you saw on TV that made you?
It was, I was around 24, and I was at this house party and it was all filled with young Jehovah's Witnesses.
Oh.
And so we would get together and obviously not
Sin.
yeah, pretty much, because drinking and having fun and stuff, unsupervised party type of thing, like kids like to do when they're teenagers and
Right.
get away with that. Well, here we are in our early 20s still hiding out trying to do those things. But a guy comes up to me and says, man, there's these two guys beating the hell out of each other in a cage on TV. And I just thought, that sounds ridiculous. Who would do something like that? In this day and age, who would choose to get punched in the face for a living or entertainment or for fun? But then I go inside and I see Hoist Gracie and Ken Shamrock going at it. And I see not only the athleticism and the skill, but also the respect and honor they had for each other. Because to me, fighting was just violence. That's all I understood of it. It was hatred and anger and violence. I never understood that there's any sport to it whatsoever. But now seeing how these athletes interact with each other, I was just awestruck. And then being 24 and drinking at a party, then we'd all wrestle and try to beat each other up. So my goal was to be able to beat up my friends. So I started training in secret because at that time I was still a Jehovah's Witness, and it was but highly frowned upon to do something like that. So I trained in secret as I kind of gathered up my skills. And my first night of practice was an hour and a half of kickboxing and an hour and a half of jiu-jitsu. So I trained for 3 hours straight. And
With your friends? They were
no,
your guinea
no, this
pigs?
was at the actual gym.
Okay.
My first days of practice. And they beat me up so badly, I was sick for 3 days. It was such a brutal workout. But as I was leaving, I said to myself, I'm going to keep coming back here till I can kick every one of your asses. And that's what I did.
Revenge. So, what was it like being in the first season of the Ultimate Fighter?
Well, so the Ultimate Fighter is a lot like I would imagine boot camp, where it's the best of times, it's the worst of times. It's such an incredibly stressful situation. So the Ultimate Fighter, they take 16 of the world's best unsigned fighters, lock them into a house for, in our case, 7 weeks to see who's going to be the best. So we had 8 middleweights at 185, 8 light heavyweights at 205. And at the end of it, they just supposedly have the 2 best guys, and they're fighting to be the title of the Ultimate Fighter. My coach, Randy Couture, shot a takedown and picked up one of my training partners, ran him into the back of me when I wasn't looking, and broke my left ankle.
Ouch.
So it took me out of competition. But because of the way that I carried myself and my reactions with my teammates, they kept me on as a coach for the show, the first and only time that's been done on the show. And then after getting my ankle fixed, I had surgery for that, got back in shape, got in fighting shape, because we had filming for 7 weeks, and then they edited it, and then they put it on TV. So we had a good 6 or 7 months in between the end of the filming of the show and when it actually aired. So in that time, I was able to heal up and be in shape, and had my first fight in the UFC.
Oh, wow. That's awesome. You're like Mr. Congeniality. That's why they kept you there?
Well, I was the head coach, or I was the team captain for my team, and it was the last thing I wanted to do. Is we picked teams, so it was Chuck Liddell and Randy Couture were the 2 coaches. Chuck got to pick first, Randy picked second. Randy picked me for the first guy on his team. So once we took our 8 guys on our team back to the house, we all sat down. They said, well, we need to figure out who the captain's going to be. And I was thinking, man, I do not want to be the captain. I do not want to babysit these idiots. I just want to worry about myself. I'll be a teammate, but I don't want to be a leader. So, of course, they voted for me to be the team captain. And immediately, Stephan Bonner, whose nickname is the American Psycho, and he does his best to live up to that, I found, he starts yelling, because everybody's already been drinking in the afternoon, and he starts yelling. He thinks he should be the captain, and blah, blah, blah. And I just took a deep breath, and I looked at him, and I said, Stephan, the louder you yell at me, the less I hear.
Oh, wow.
If you could quiet down, I could hear what you're saying a little better. And he just immediately was quiet, and I said, if this is what you guys want, I'll be your team captain. I'll tell you right now, I'm not going to withhold anything from you. If I win this, I want it to be because I'm the best fighter here, not because I was pulling some pranks or messing with all of you mentally, playing mind games. You're going to get the best of me, and I expect the same from all of you.
Oh, awesome. And who won at the end?
At the end, well, we had in my weight class was Diego Sanchez and Kenny Florian. And Diego took down Kenny immediately and hammered him out early in the first round. And then the main event that night, well, the co-main event was Stephan Bonner and Forrest Griffin. And they put on just this war that has been ranked as the #1 most important fight in UFC history, because everyone was tuning in to see this fight go down. And Forrest ended up winning by split decision, I think it was, either decision or split decision. I've not really watched much of the Ultimate Fighter after that season.
Oh.
Too drama-based for me, but the first season, one of the keys was all of us were already fighting around the country. That was a passion that we had. We didn't start fighting because we saw it on TV and thought it would be cool or way to get chicks or anything like that. It was like, we want to fight. This is our sport. And so when the UFC came calling, we were literally some of the best unsigned fighters in the nation. And it shows because over half of the season's crew stayed on in the UFC for quite a while. Now you'll have entire seasons that wash out immediately, because guys see the UFC, see the Ultimate Fighter on TV, they say, I want to do that, they start training, and then they get on the Ultimate Fighter, and they've had 1 or 2 fights, something like that. I'd already been fighting tough guys before I ever made it to the UFC.
Oh, wow. I shall tune in with that thing. Ultimate Fighter?
The Ultimate Fighter Season 1.
Season 1.
The best.
The best. So what was it, speaking of Randy Couture, so what was it like training with him on a daily basis and Team Quest? How was it?
Well, it was funny when I started training was down in Salem Kaiser area here in Oregon, just at a local gym, and it turned out that Randy lived maybe a half a mile away from our gym. Well, he had just won a tournament in the UFC, and one of my training partners opened up the phone book, found Randy's name, and called him and
Wow.
said, "You should come down to our gym and start training with us. We're the best around."
He was in a phone book?
Yep.
Okay.
So I remember the very first time I ever trained with Randy. I had never even seen an athlete like that. For him to go 5 minutes unstopped at full round was just mind blowing. But we would have guys rotate in on him every minute for that 5 minutes, and we would just be completely exhausted. So more than anything, what I learned from Randy was the athleticism and the dedication and the fitness. He always came in phenomenal shape, and he was so strong and athletic and did his drills. And one of the main reasons why he was so successful, he was also humble. He recognized, well, I'm one of the world's best at Greco-Roman, but I know no jiu-jitsu, no very little kickboxing or boxing. So he took beginner classes so he could learn those skills, and then he'd combine them with his strengths in fighting already.
Oh, wow. So the humbleness helps you with the game to become the best fighter, or
Well, you should have humility in everything that you do, because it's so obvious to see throughout the world. People are engaged in conversations. Most often, they don't want to hear what you have to say. I want you to hear what I have to say. So I pretend that we're having this give and take conversation, but in reality, all I'm doing is waiting till I can tell you what I think.
right?
And in the fighting world or your job or whatever it may be, I showed up, and everyone always asked me, what was your keys to success? I wasn't afraid to look stupid, and I wasn't afraid to work hard, because I would show up and I knew absolutely nothing. And I just said, I don't know this. I don't know anything about this. Teach me so I can become better, and in that case, I'll become a better training partner for you. The first day that I trained with Dan Henderson, two-time Olympic Greco-Roman wrestler, Pride light heavyweight and middleweight champion, held the belt in two weight classes at the same time. Now keep in mind, I had not even fought, or I was completely green. He beat the crap out of me so badly. He was suplexing me, which is a belly to back throw where he grabs me from behind and just basically chucks me over his head. And he's slamming down on my head, and my neck hurts so bad that in between rounds, I'm on all fours. I can't even lift my head up.
Wow.
And Randy's trying to coach me, and I had to push my head up so I could look at him. And Randy's saying, okay, you're giving up the underhook. You have to do this. You have to do that. And I just look at him and I go, I don't know what an underhook is. And he just looked at me and goes, well, we'll work on that. Okay, time, you're up.
Yeah.
And then we'd go again, and Danny would suplex me over and over again.
Oh, wow. That must have. How long does it take you to heal, to want to go back? You tell yourself, no matter how hurt you are, you're going to go.
Well, there's a difference between injuries and pain. So you have to determine what that is. There's waking up and being sore and saying, oh, I'm going to sit on the couch for a while. And there's waking up and being injured. Two very different things. If you're sore, then you just go out and work again. If you're aching, you go out and work again. If you're injured, then you need to deal with that. But again, we have people, and like my Muay Thai coach, Mr. Dan Burke in Oregon City, we always get together and we'll laugh about the up-and-coming guys. And one will call him and say, oh, I can't train today. I hurt my left wrist at less practice, so I need to rest it. And my coach, Mr. Burke, is saying, we can work on right elbows. We can work on right hands. We can work on kicks. We can work on knees, any of those things. But the guys that are coming up, they don't have that mental toughness. They don't have the ability to just compartmentalize, yeah, this is an injury. It may even be a legit one, but I can train otherwise. When I was training with Burke regularly, before I fought Tim Crater, I had strained the left femoral nerve in my left leg. So all the way down my leg is this big nerve that controls everything. I had strained that nerve so it felt like fire in that leg. I couldn't put any weight on my left leg other than just kind of hopping around. And still, I showed up to practice, and I
Wow.
jumped rope on my right foot. And when the bell would go off, I would go and lean against the wall, and I would just stand there, or I would just lay down and kind of let the pain subside. But I knew I was going to fight no matter what, and this was my career choice. This is how I feed my little girl. It was, for me, feeling sorry for myself and just sitting at home resting wasn't going to get the work done.
So, what made you come up with this zombie cage fighter?
Well, Zombie Cage Fighter is basically, it's a biographical horror story of my life.
He's going to autograph this for me.
Very true. Everyone had been bugging me to write a biography, but I didn't want to write the usual Rocky story. It's been done over and over again. So I wrote about things that I've seen and done as a fighter and as a single father, and then I threw in zombies as kind of the hook. And everyone always asks me, what's my favorite zombie movie? I've always liked zombies. I never really did because the stories were always too.
Blooper.
The stories were always just too plain. There was no character development or anything. And in my story, this is my life. These are the struggles that I've gone through. Especially this is the one issue, one shot. This summer, I'm going to launch the 6-issue miniseries live on Spike TV at San Diego Comic-Con this summer. Mm-hmm. That's going to tell the whole story, and it interweaves in things that I've gone through, things that I've seen and done as a father and as a fighter.
It's more emotional than horror, as you were telling me before.
Yeah, it's not really about MMA. It's not even about zombies. It's about a father's love for his daughter, and I think that's what we all can look for. And the story basically is, I lost the big fights. It kind of got me to where I am today, and so now I'm in my mid-40s. I've still got a daughter I'm taking care of as a single father. Well, my biggest goal is to make sure she doesn't end up like me. Well, how am I going to do that?
What do you mean, like you? Like you are a successful person
old,
right now?
Not in the comic book.
Not in the comic book? Okay.
No, in the comic book, about around 8 years ago, I had a big comeback fight. So I had a spinal fusion back surgery that nobody thought it was possible for me to come back from.
Oh.
Well, I came back and I won my return fight in the UFC. I fought 6 times after that spinal fusion. Well, that was the biggest fight of my career, coming back from such a strong injury. Well, in the story, I don't win those fights. So now I'm still on the smaller circuit, fighting for $500 here and there just to put food on the table. And I take a beating at one of the small shows, and as I'm leaving, the promoter tells me, you're done. I can't use you anymore. You can't even last half a round with a no-talent kid anymore. But I run into another promoter who says, come see me. I've got some interesting things in the works. And he introduces me to the underground zombie cage fights. Because every zombie movie you ever see is always 6 billion zombies and a handful of humans surviving. Right. Somewhere between today and that imminent zombie apocalypse, zombies are going to be more of a nuisance or a political liability. They'll have hazmat teams that are going out and taking care of families that have been turned, things like that. And in that case, there's going to be some of these less than scrupulous types that are taking some of these zombies and putting on the underground zombie cage fight. So it's kind of a mix between the old Van Damme movie Bloodsport meets The Walking Dead.
What's your daughter's name? You want to say hello to her?
Sierra.
Sierra.
Ciera.
Hi, Sierra.
So when you have a child, and especially myself at 28, completely unexpected, having this with a relationship that was going nowhere, I said, well, you know what? When I'm 60 or 70 years old, I'm going to look back at this time and I'm going to say to myself, either I did it right and here's my daughter wanting to spend time with me and now my grandkids, or I selfishly ignored her, and when I do want her attention, she has no time for me. Mm-hmm. So I said, I want her to always be in my life, and she's going to know what a priority she is in mine. So all the work that I've done, where we live now in Lake Oswego, the only reason we live there is for the schools. Mm-hmm. And at one point I had to take all of my savings, all the money that I'd made, just so I could move to Lake Oswego to get her out of a negative situation with her mother and put her into a good school, because she wasn't even making it to school when she was living with her mother. She was gone, missing school 20-25% of the time.
Oh, really?
And she's so incredibly bright that I said, that's just not acceptable. So I was able to work some magic through some bribery and some threats and get my daughter to move in with me and go to school out of my house in Lake Oswego.
Bribery and threats from
That's a good combination.
Quarry. Be very scared. And, so any director interested in making a big movie like Touchstone Pictures?
Well, when I launched this issue in 2012, I was looking for a publisher. Everyone shot me down. Yeah. And so I did what I always do it myself, because no one ever believed in me when I started fighting. They thought it was a joke. I would never be successful with that. When I wrote the screenplay, wrote the story for Zombie Cage Fighter, even my own agent didn't want to read it because he was worried it was going to be bad and he didn't want to tell me. Well, he calls me like 2 months later and goes, oh my God, this is really good. I said, I know it's good. Yeah. I wrote it. I wouldn't have put out crap.
Because I believe in me.
Exactly.
Right.
So in 2012, when I launched the comic book, I did it live on Spike TV at San Diego Comic-Con, followed up with interviews on G4, and then dozens and dozens of other interviews, and kind of culminated with being on Kevin Smith's Comic Book Men, where I brought the comic book to New Jersey to see if he wanted to carry it in his store, and ended up putting on a fight with 2 guys dressed up as Jay and Silent Bob from Clerks. So Kevin Smith was there, and Jason Mewes was there as well, which was just awesome for me to get to see that. Kevin Smith emailed me after that, expressing interest in the story, making a movie with this, and wanting the screenplay. But it's all Hollywood. We'll see how it pans out. Right from the beginning, I had offers on the screenplay, but it was such a bad offer that I passed. And I believe in my property. I believe the biggest complaint I've ever gotten about Zombie Cage Fighters, we want more. When's the next issue coming out?
Okay.
And I've sold copies of the issue around the world. Australia, Germany, people ordering it from Australia, Germany, the UK, paying $17 in shipping just to get one copy of my comic book.
Wow.
So to me, that means that I'm doing something right, and that's complete thanks to the fans for believing in me and taking a chance.
Things are awesome. Hopefully, we'll see a movie and with you in it, playing yourself.
My caveat to that is I'd love to play myself in the movie as long as I don't suck. If I'm a terrible actor, I would rather somebody else do it. But I think that the big thing any actor would have to know about this story is that it's an emotional story. It's not a superhero story. And that's when I was dealing with one of my first artists who was doing some test runs, he drew all the characters, especially my character, as this big, strong Superman type guy. And I said, no, this is a man who's broken. He's in his mid-40s. Every dream that he's ever had has failed. And his only chance to save his little girl is to do underground zombie cage fights where if he wins, he can win a little bit of money to put food on the table for another week or two. And if he loses, well, then next week he's the zombie. So you have to be pretty low willing to risk something like that. And even after his first big fight, and you can see in the final page in the book, after my character actually wins the fight, you can see the look on his face isn't one of success, of I won,
You're
I'm
telling
so
us the
happy.
ending, you're spoiling it.
Well, it's the one shot. You're not going to know the ending of the whole series until you see that. But the look on his face at the end of it is one of, how did my life come to this? After everything, how has everything gone so wrong?
Cool. Maybe Ben Affleck? He's a friend of Kevin
God.
Smith. Okay, Matt Damien? No.
Maybe.
A friend of mine works the show forever, but he has very dark hair. Oh, the one question I forgot to ask you. Yeah, I've seen you're my friend on Facebook, and some of my friends actually messaged me. And then she lives in Hawaii. Gloria, hi Gloria.
Hi, Gloria.
She's a good friend of mine. She's a nice woman. We were in acting class together. So she's like, what's going on with Nate Quarry? I'm like, well, he's posting a lot of UFC. Are you suing UFC? Can you
I'm a part of a class action lawsuit against UFC for an antitrust lawsuit because they've monopolized the entire sport, buying up all the competitive organizations, shutting them down, and then the treatment of the fighters, the pay that they dictate to the fighters. There's no open market any longer. And when you have nowhere else to go, they can pretty much do whatever they want to. And even champions like Jose Aldo, they're dictating to Jose Aldo, this is what you're worth, this is what we're going to pay you. Well, Jose has no way of knowing because the market has been completely shut down. Maybe he's worth 5 times as much, but he doesn't know because there's no Pride, Elite XC, Affliction, WFA, WEC, all organizations that have been bought out, shut down one way or another by the UFC. So my goal is to have a completely open marketplace where fighters can actually come together and get what they're worth. If you look at something like the NFL Players Association has been around for 50, 60 years or so. You have these owners who are worth billions of dollars and players with an average career lifespan of 3.5 years. They need in that 3.5 years to make as much as they can to support their family for as long as they can. And you have the owners doing the same thing that they always do. Oh, this is just about money for you. That's ridiculous. You're so greedy. Well, who's the greedy one? Is it the player or the fighter who started training as a kid, trained through high school, paid memberships to go to gyms, in the case of football, played in front of massive crowds in high school. The whole crowd was paying to be there. He wasn't compensated. Played for college, was given a stipend, and a lot of the college football players are on welfare because they're making so little money they can't feed their families, while college football is making $5 billion a year. Then they go into professional football. So they've just played for 12, 16 years or so for free, for next to no money whatsoever.
Right.
Then you have these billionaire owners just clutching to the billions that they have, calling the players greedy. No, I don't think so. I think it's the other way around.
Yeah.
And especially with fighters now too, it's kind of a mixed blessing with NFL players. Okay, I get to the NFL at 22. By 26, my career's over. I just made $1.5 million. I can buy a house. I can buy a car. I've got a college education. Now I can get another job, and I'm still a young man. I can live my dreams. Whereas with a fighter, The average NFL player has made more in one season than I made my entire career of fighting. I fought for 12 years, trained and started training at 24, first fight at 26, fought for the UFC for approximately 7 years or so. So at that time, they're always kind of stringing you along. Well, maybe you'll get the big fight. Well, maybe it'll go your way. And again, with the NFL, you have all your coaches paid for, you have your training camp paid for, everything is covered. With fighters, we have to pay for our own medical. So when I fought in Canada, they presented it to me as, oh, this is a great opportunity for you to fight in the first card in Canada. Well, I didn't know that Canada has special regulations. You have to do special medical tests not covered by insurance. So I had to pay $1,000
Wow.
just for a brain scan to fight up in Canada. Then I had to pay Canada taxes. Then I had to pay American taxes as well. And they give you one flight for yourself, one flight for a cornerman. You never see one cornerman. You can't fight like that, not in today's world. So you've got to fly up 3 or 4 guys. That's another $300-400 a ticket there. Then you can't put all those guys in one hotel room, so you have to get a second hotel room. And you've got to feed all those guys for all week. So a lot of guys, it gets to the point where you'll hear this, oh man, you made $20,000 in one night. That's amazing. Well, in reality, just directly for that fight, you train for 4 months. Let's say you got an orbital floor fracture or your nose is broken. That's a 6-month layoff. So you made 20 grand over 10 months. Take 20 grand, take 30 to 40% right off the top for taxes, and then all your training expenses, your medical expenses, all that. That 20 grand is whittled down to $5,000 or $6,000. Live on that for 10 months. And everyone always says the same thing. Well, if I don't like what I'm getting paid, I'll just do another job. Please, tell me where I can go. Where else can I follow my dream, where I'm fighting for a living? I could go to Pride, except it was bought and closed down by the UFC. Affliction, Elite XC, I already went through the list. They've just completely controlled the market and shut it down. And it's so funny. We have such a short-term memory here, especially in the United States, and really being shown right now with the measles outbreaks. Well, I've never seen anyone with measles, therefore it doesn't exist and I don't need it. Well, just a few decades ago, massive amounts of people were dying of measles. But we come up with this vaccine, just about wipes it out, so people forget that it was ever a problem.
Right.
Well, now as we look out here, we can see exit signs. We can see fire exits. We have a 40-hour work week. We work over that. We get time and a half. We get paid vacation. We have medical, all these things. That all came into play because around 100 years ago, there was a massive fire in New York where 146 men and women died in a sewing shop. The fire exits, the exits were closed, so no one could leave. They worked ungodly hours for next to nothing. So all the workers got together and protested to change things for everyone. And you look at sports, every sport has gone through the same thing. The NBA, the NFL, baseball, all of these, where you have this massive player, this massive billionaire organization that says, look, I want to give you an opportunity to live your dream. I'm going to let you play baseball for me for $10,000 a year. And you're like, well, that's great. Living my dream, making 10 grand a year. How much are you making? Don't worry about it. It's not about money. This is about you following your dream. Well, how long would you follow your dream for free? Because eventually you're like, well, yeah, I do have to have a place to live. Well, I've got a kid. I need to feed them. Well, I'd like to not be working into my 80s, so I need to set up a retirement fund. And when you're making next to nothing, none of that's possible. And if it was a charity, then I'd be all for it. If we were working to cure cancer, every dime of profit was going to the United Way or Children's Hospital, that's one story. But when the UFC is owned by billionaires who are bringing in
Oh, excuse me. Blooper.
are bringing in $500 million a year, and our best estimate is about 10% of that goes to the 500 to 600 fighters around. Those are starvation wages. So and everybody says, oh, well, look at all the UFC's done for you. Well, what about what we've done for the UFC? How many times have you seen Dana crying after a title fight because he gave his all for that? None. For him, this is a business. For us, this is our passion. This is our life. And I think my favorite photo taken at an MMA event is Joe Stevenson. He was fighting for the title, I think, against BJ Penn. And he lost, got cut really bad, and he's just covered in blood. And he's sitting there in the corner just crying out. He's so upset because that meant so much to him. We do this because we love it. But it's also a business, and we deserve to be compensated for that. And with the way that the UFC has treated the fighters, saying that, well, you're not employees, so we don't have to give you benefits. You're independent contractors, but you can't go anywhere else. Well, isn't that against the law? Isn't that against the rules? You can't dictate. Someone comes to paint your house, you don't say, You can only wear this. You can only paint my house. You can only paint when I tell you to. You can't go anywhere else. But I don't have to pay
It's
you.
like your religion when you were young.
Yep.
Yeah.
And so, and I felt that the fighters needed a voice. And of course, you have, again, people saying, well, you're just a bitter fighter, never made it. Dude, are you kidding me, man? I've had a great career. I
Right.
fought for the world title. Had 2 fight of the nights, 1 knockout of the night. I came from nothing. I saw my father die at 62 with nothing but debt and regret. And I'm living my dreams. This isn't about me. It's not about how much I've made or how much John Jones or an individual champion has made. This is about a class. That's why it's a class action. And I'm standing up for all the fighters that are too scared to say anything right now, because they know if they stand up and say this is ridiculous, how little we're getting paid, the treatment that we're getting with the massive,
Excuse me.
Isn't it?
Allergies.
with the massive amount of money we're bringing in, somebody needs to be the voice for them.
Oh, that's awesome that you're actually stepping up for doing it for others, not only for yourself, obviously.
Well,
And-
I'm retired. I'm not. If
Yeah.
we win this lawsuit and they say, okay, everybody gets 3 times as much money, I'm not going to unretire. I'm 42. I'll be 43 in another month. So my time has passed. But I can leave a legacy knowing that I was able to change the industry for fighters to come. And again, they talk about, well, look at what the UFC has done for the sport. Really? Well, let's see. What are you paying to see when you buy a pay-per-view, you watch a fight? Are you watching to see the UFC? Are you a big fan of their production values of the show? Do you love that Dana White gets up there and talks?
No.
Or do you want to see a brutal fight with 2 guys just going at it, showing this phenomenal skill? That's the fighters. Nobody watches the NFL and says, man, I'm going to get a Goodell jersey, or the president of the NFL. Nobody cares about him. They care about the team. They care about the players. We're the players. Not only are we the workers, we're also the product.
Right.
We're the ones that need the support of the fans out there. And for the most part, we've gotten it. 99% of the fans out there understand what we're going through. And they see just the treatment the fighters are getting and the hypocrisy, the double standard. My good friend Kung Lee, the UFC did a botched drug test on him. Claimed to have caught him using human growth hormone. The test was so poorly executed that it was a joke. And as soon as I even heard that they tested him for human growth hormone, my first thought was, I didn't realize they'd come up with a reliable test for HGH. Well, they haven't. It was a completely botched test, and the UFC immediately threw Kung Lee under the bus and said, we caught him, he's guilty, he's suspended for a year.
Oh, wow.
Because there's no sanctioning body for Kung Lee to dispute their findings with, he had to go present his case to the UFC themselves, to Dana White, to the Fertittas, and say, I'm not guilty. You botched the test. Do you think that they're going to go, boy, you're right, we're so sorry? No, they looked at him and said, we know you're guilty, just admit it.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, we screwed up the test, but we know you're guilty. Just admit it. And Kung Lee's like, no, I'm not. I'm completely innocent. Well, then John Jones fails a drug test a month before his last fight for cocaine. And Dana White comes out and says, we love John Jones. He's just got a problem. We're going to help him out because John Jones is a champion.
Right.
And he'll sell pay-per-views for them. And they felt that they'd used Kung Lee as much as they could. Now, this past weekend, Anderson Silva and Nick Diaz both failed their drug test. And again, it's the double standard. And someone had put together this phenomenal video of Dana White talking about drug use in the UFC. One was talking about Matt Riddle and Nick Diaz a year or 2 ago, where Dana's just mad and he's swearing, these guys, these are assholes, these are idiots, they don't understand, this is a business. We're going to fine them, we're going to cut them if they do drugs. We have a hard stance on drug use. And then it cuts to him talking about John Jones. He's just got a problem. We just want to help him. And John Jones went to rehab for a day.
Wow.
1 day.
He got cured?
Yep. And it's funny because cocaine stays in your system for 2 or 3 days. So he's in the middle of a fight camp doing cocaine. It's just unbelievable.
Well, he's making money for them.
He's making money for them, and that's the double standard. And I've always hated that. I've always hated hypocrisy, double standards, and being lied to. I'm just like anybody.
Right.
Nobody likes to be lied to. We all hate double standards. Oh, I'm all for John Jones making more money. He's a champion. That's great. He commits the same crimes as anyone else. He should be punished the same. And then you're going to hold it up to a higher standard, and everyone's going to say, oh, the UFC is legitimate. But no, they have their own double standards. They have the guys that they want to take care of. And of that 10% of the money that does go to the fighters, about 90% of that goes to the chosen few. So you have the other 550 or so just living on starvation wages. And that's, I remember seeing there was a guy who fought, boy, it's been a while now, it was 2012, fought co-main event on the biggest pay-per-view of the time. I think he fought Rory, I can't think of his last name. But he fought co-main event, biggest pay-per-view of the year so far, for $8,000. So you've got a pay-per-view bringing in 500,000 buys, 750,000 buys, something like that. Do the math. 500,000 times $60, and you're paying your co-main event $8,000.
Wow.
I couldn't do that. I couldn't look at myself in the mirror and do that. I would be looking at myself and saying, you took that guy's, his kids aren't going to go to college now. Mm-hmm. How can he feed his family? Maybe he got injured. Now he's got 6 months layoff. Maybe he needs a surgery. You break your nose, that's 6 months off. So that's 10 months he's living on $8,000 to fight in the biggest organization in the world. Wow. It just makes no sense to me. And it's so funny. Again, you'll hear people talk about all those spoiled athletes in the NFL or the NBA. Oh, that guy makes $10 million a year. What a spoiled brat. Where do you think that $10 million a year would go to if it didn't go to the player? Are you going to get a refund on your tickets? Are they going to lower ticket prices? It goes directly to the owner. And somebody had even asked me, well, what's going to happen to pay-per-view costs if you guys win this lawsuit and everybody's value goes up? Do you think they'll go down if we lose? No, the UFC charges $60 because you'll pay $60. They don't charge $25 out of the goodness of their hearts. We're making enough money and we're paying the fighter shit, so let's just start $25. No, they know you'll pay $60. If you want to buy a t-shirt, like Affliction t-shirts cost $60, $70, probably cost them $3 to make it. Why didn't they sell it for $3? Because you'll buy it for $60 or $70. That's pure economics. Mm-hmm. The UFC is going to charge as much as they possibly can so people will buy the product. They don't charge $250 for a pay-per-view. Nobody would buy it. They're right at the edge. They've done all the studies. This is what we feel we could charge the most. And they even came out and said, oh, we're only going to charge $5 more for this show. It never works out that way. It's an increase across the board. So I'm really trying to stand up for the fighters, let them benefit a little for the work, the hard work that they've put in for being some of the best athletes in the entire world. When I went to the NFL Players Association, it was so amazing to see these massive football players were excited to see us, and Vanderlei Silva was excited to meet him and shake his hand, and because we're the athletes everybody wants to be like, because we're the most brutal, we're one-on-one, we're true fighters, until they find out how much we get paid. And then they're more than happy to stay in the NFL or NBA or wherever.
They're like, we're good. Wow. Yeah, it's true. Some people don't, even like concert goers, they think like, let's say a famous person is making millions of dollars out of their concert, but most of it goes to their record company or their promoter. They said, we don't get anything. Like New Edition was saying that, I think, a long time ago. I listened to the
TLC, I remember, they were talking about why they had to claim bankruptcy, and they broke down what a CD costs and how much they get. CD cost $10, $12, they were getting 5 cents out of that. So it didn't really matter how many they sold. They were still completely broke for these things. It's all the stuff that goes on behind the scenes that people really don't know about. And again, this is a career that I've chosen, and it's great. All I want is a fair, balanced place to be in. You look at what was the greatest fight you wanted to happen that never happened? For me, it was, I would have loved to seen Fedor fight Randy Couture. You know who else wanted to see that fight? Mark Cuban.
Oh, okay.
You think he could have put on a pretty good fight with Randy Couture and Fedor? Would have sold a lot of pay-per-views. He could have bought all the champions out there and put together this dream card. It would have been something of legend, and he would have made a ton of money, and the fighters would have made a ton of money. The UFC fought him because they said, no, we own these guys. We own Randy. He signed a contract with us. He can't go anywhere.
Wow. So
the UFC killed what could have been one of the best cards of all time because of these monopolistic practices. And so my goal is, once again, if it was an open marketplace, even if the UFC still, if we open that up and the UFC still is the biggest dog, well, Bellator could still come in then and bid for that fight. Mark Cuban could come back in and say, oh, I want to put this fight together. Because when you have a monopoly, you get to dictate everything, all the terms to everyone. And that's what's happening right now with this Reebok deal. They're saying, we made a deal with Reebok, so we're going to take care of all of our fighters. They're going to get all this money from Reebok. Well, now the most recent thing is they're going to get most of the money from Reebok. They haven't come out and said $1 amount for what the fighters are going to get. Our best guess is it's about a $10 million a year deal for Reebok to sponsor all of the UFC fighters. That sounds pretty dramatic until you've got around 600 fighters, each fighting 3 or 4 times a year, and with the main mass of that money going to the champions. So the champions are getting the most, and then ranked 1 through 10 get a bigger bite. So somebody who's been fighting, like my friend Eddie Herman, fought in the UFC now 18 times because he's not ranked in the top 10, he's going to get the same amount of money as somebody 0-0 in the UFC. That's just not right. And it doesn't matter how popular you are at home, how many supporters you have. In my last fight, I was making more money through sponsorships than I was paid by the UFC. Because I had companies that wanted to support me. They wanted to attach themselves to my name and how I carried myself. Now the UFC is saying, no, you don't get that anymore. You get, and our best guess again is unranked fighters will probably get around $2,000 in sponsorships. My last fight, I made around $40,000 in sponsorships. So money is, while the UFC is doing better than ever, bigger than ever, more worldwide, fighters are making less and less money, and they have no rights whatsoever. Now fighters are saying, oh, I signed an 8-fight contract with the UFC. And I always say the same thing. Cool, so you're guaranteed 8 fights in the UFC? Huh, that's pretty good. And I always go, whoa, no. Oh, they can cut you at any time. Anytime that they don't like your performance, you have one bad night, you say something on Twitter they don't like, you're publicly talking about your pay, they can cut you whenever they want, but you have no rights to go anywhere else. And even at the end of their contract, then the UFC has a period of time where they can match any offer that comes in. So they basically own you.
Wow.
And even with my likeness rights, they own my likeness in perpetuity. When I signed my contract with UFC, I didn't even know what in perpetuity meant. All I knew is Dana White looked at me and said, don't worry, if this thing takes off, we'll take care of you. And I thought, well, I'm a man of my word, so obviously he must be as well, so it'll all work out. Well, little did I know that that's not really the case. What my version of taking care of someone is quite a bit different than his.
Greed?
Yeah, and I'm just not that guy.
Wow.
And Dana is known to tip his waiter $10,000. What that says about someone is, I want everyone to know how successful I am. Money means nothing to me. My employees are the enemy because I'm paying my waiter more money than I'm paying my fighters. So it would be better for you long term to become a bartender and serve Dana drinks. If he came into your bar once every 3 months, you'd still be doing better serving him drinks than you would be fighting for him.
Oh, wow. That's pretty sad. And then these people, right now, that's monopolized. Do they know what's going on? That they're owned? Do they go into it, or are they losing people to recruit to UFC, or are they?
Well, because they bought up all the competition, there's been nowhere to go.
Yeah.
Finally, there's some organizations that are coming along, but the UFC even calls them B players because they have all the best fighters in the world locked down on contracts. And when you shut everybody else out, then there's nowhere else to go.
Well, that sucks. Well, I hope you win. There's 2 other people that are with you that are.
There's quite a few now. We've got Kung Lee, John Fitch, Javier Vasquez, quite a few guys that are coming on board.
Oh, that's awesome.
And pretty much every fighter that I talk to. You can always tell what the fighters think about something because they don't publicly speak about it.
Okay.
So when the news for the lawsuit came out, I got a lot of private messages from fighters saying, thank you. Please stick it to him. I wish I could be there with you, but I'm still under contract, and this is how I feed my family. But as soon as I'm done, I'll be right there with you. And I understand because the UFC will even if they didn't get cut right then and there. Oh, you're on this lawsuit, we're cutting you. They can manipulate your fights, how often you get fights, put you on an undercard on a show that no one's going to see. And because the UFC ranks the fighters themselves, they just decide, well, you're not in the top 10. So you don't get very much money from the sponsorships.
Oh, wow. Pure evil. But
well, you want to talk about pure evil. The UFC just filed a motion. We filed our court case in San Jose.
Okay.
They filed for a change of venue to take it to Las Vegas. When they filed that, they put mine, Kung's, Fitch's, and I think some others as well, our social security numbers, passport numbers, and
Yours
expiration dates. Yes.
Oh, wow.
On the paperwork for public record. So now all of our personal information, passport number and social security number, is out there for public record thanks to the UFC.
Is it not illegal?
There is a federal rule, statute 5.2, that says you cannot do that.
Oh, well, another lawsuit.
So are they inept, or are they flat out evil, or is it a little from column A and a little from column B? Well, I don't know if you saw my recent Facebook feed. April 18th at the Roseland Theater for the FCFF, the Full Contact Fighting Federation. There's a young man here locally in the Portland area that's been training for about 4 years, and his dream is to become an MMA champion.
Okay.
So the young man's name is Jacob. His backstory is that he has Down syndrome. And so he's been training for a few years now, and every day he comes to practice, or when he trains with his coach, he says, "Coach, when can I fight for the championship?" And he's done sparring matches with his coach in the gym, but that's just not enough for Jacob. So I've volunteered to step into the ring with Jacob and put on an exhibition bout with him and give him a shot at the title.
Really?
Yep. April 18th, Roseland Theater, Portland. I think this is the fight that I'm probably getting the most boos for sure, that people want to see Jacob win. And
who's going to win? Is this staged, or are you going to let him win? It's his ultimate dream. Come on.
Well, all I can say is Jacob and I are going to do our best to put on a show, and I'm going to do my best to help Jacob fulfill his dream. And thinking about what his family has gone through with, I can't imagine having I don't know the proper way to say it anymore, disabled, differently abled, whatever it may be, having a child that's different than others. It's got to be so restrictive for a lot of what you're trying to accomplish in your life and for your children. So if I can have just some small way give their family a sense of the normalcy of what any family should go through, then it's the least I can do.
Oh, that's very nice of you. So, well, thank you so much for joining me. And the questions were sent by my friend Philip.
Fabador is slightly different.
Gracie Baja. So, yeah, with Fabiano Schörner. That's his coach.
Fabio. Fabiano.
And so...
Love that guy. He's awesome.
He's awesome? You know him?
Oh, yeah.
Okay, cool. So, yeah, so Philip Robordi, and that's his name, and he gave me these questions. Thank God he was a big help. And check out the...
Good job, buddy.
So, people have hope.
They should.
Life is not over. So, but before we go, my friends who train, so, like, if you could show me. So if you have your fist up.
Well, this is your computer, so you want to make sure you protect your computer. We're losing
our tablecloth.
Yeah. You want to protect your brain.
So let me get a few training from Nate Quarry over here.
So it is good. When I'm fighting, I'm standing like this. I've got my hands both up, so my jaw's covered. This is the most sensitive part to your head. You get dinged right on the chin.
Right here. Yeah.
And this is, if you just look at the fulcrum of it. You hit somebody back here, it's going to hurt. It can definitely do a knockout.
Okay.
But you hit them right on the tip of the chin, it dislocates the jaw, and they go unconscious. So I'm always constantly covering up that jaw. I've got my chin down, I've got my arms up. Now if somebody does throw a big hook at me, yeah, I'll cover here. And I'll bring my elbow up and I'll cover, I'll bring it in tight.
Like that. Okay.
So I'm a lot more disappeared. A really good way to do it too is to move your head side to side so the punches slip by you, or bob and weave so they go over the top. That's a more advanced move.
It's like more like a Muhammad Ali kind of thing. Okay. Wow. But I saw your YouTube with Pete Self, and then you were on the ground, and then you got up, and then you just knocked him out, just like that, and he went down.
Well, the just like that was
I was
into
like,
the third round.
What did you do?
He had beaten on me for the first 2 rounds pretty solidly. He actually dropped me in the second round, hit me right on the jaw, like I just said, dropped me. But I was able to come back to life and keep on fighting. And then in the third round, I hit him as hard as I could and dropped him and finished him up one more time.
Pete Drago landed a big right hand, and Nate Quarry looks like he's in trouble early. But rocked him. And again, Quarry could be in trouble. Lands down. Quarry back up though. Quarry trying to fight it out. Quarry landed a good shot there. Not the rock Quarry. Goodness has won.
But that's the best thing about MMA is it's everything. You can do pretty much all the fighting techniques. So anybody that says, well, I think this is the best fighting technique, well, prove it. Just get in the ring and fight. That's why I started a campaign, Randy Couture versus Steven Seagal. I
Right.
even have T-shirts that were available on my website and everything, and a big petition for people to sign up. Because Steven Seagal had been talking over and over again, oh, I'm the best fighter in the world. I've trained all these guys. I'm the best around. Well, then prove it. It's pretty simple.
Did he
Take a
say
fight.
okay?
Oh, hell no.
No.
No, I don't know if he believes his own bull, but that would be awesome. It was kind of like James Toney when he fought Randy. He says, well, I'm this phenomenal boxer. I'm going to show the world what it is. Boxers clinch. They have no takedown defense, so we take them down. This isn't a boxing match. It would be, in James Toney then told Randy, well, come fight me in a boxing ring. Randy went, hell no. You'd crush me.
Right.
We don't have any delusions. I'm not going to go kickbox with Ernesto Hoost, one of the world's best kickboxers. He'd crush me. I'm not going to box with Mike Tyson. I'm not going to do jiu-jitsu with Dean Lister or Damian Maia. I fought Damian Maia and he choked me out. That's enough for me. I'm not going to go to him on his world. We're
It's different.
what's the saying? Jack of all trades, master of none. So you can have, and a lot of the fighters nowadays, they will have a black belt in jiu-jitsu or they'll have a professional kickboxing, but we have to have an all-encompassing game in case we do get taken out of our best zone. So one of my best was when I get taken down is I pop right back up. I never wanted to get beaten on my back.
Oh, okay. That makes sense. What is your advice for future UFC fighters?
For future fighters,
Somebody who sees the UFC says, I want to do that.
you have to train, you have to fight for the love of the sport. It's too hard to do it otherwise. Don't do it for money or fame. You have to do it for the love of the sport, the love of fighting. But you have to treat it like a business. Because if you don't, everyone else is. And at the end of the day, you'll have nothing. You have to do it for the love of it, but treat it like a business. Make them come to you, make them want you, and then you can demand your own terms.
And be humble.
Humble is always good.
Cool.
I'm twice as good as I think I am. That's how humble I am.
Oh, that's nice. But thank you so much. And then we'll tune in next time and learn about MMA in our next show. And this was all about Nate and the Ultimate
Sweet.
Fighter.
It's my best subject.
And zombie cage fighting. Thank you so
That's
much.
also my best subject.